Welcome one and all. Now, being a game that has had possibly the most public attention prior to launch, this will be a zippy look across both console versions and how they perform and differ from the final release. If you want to learn more about the game and how it plays, plus my thoughts, please check out my first contact video from earlier in the week. I will also have a PC release video up soon that compares it to the console and across various versions of itself to give you an idea how they compare. The link will appear in the video and below once that is ready. And finally, a detailed look at the engine promises and how it finally succeeded or failed on those long promises and how close it can get to its vertical slice demonstrations. Again, the link will appear in the video here and below once that is ready. But for now, let's take a look at the Division across PS4 and Xbox One. Starting with the all-important resolution. Now, the first thing is on resolution, with the same tests I've performed on the Xbox One shows that it sticks to a fully native 1920 by 1080 display. Conversely, the Xbox One does run a dynamic resolution with numbers ranging from a full native 1920 to 1080. It achieves this in less action or dense sequences, along with all tested cutscenes which predominantly occur indoors. But in some of the heavier sections as shown, it can drop to 1720 by 1002 or 1745 by 972. At its lowest point. Now, from these tests, the near identical pixel count seems to suggest that the game fluctuates between 2 or 3 set resolutions that it picks from, rather than a fully dynamic or much lower level. This means that in nearly all cinematics and indoor sections you have a fully native 1080 display just like the PS4, and when in bigger view ranges, and these tend to be all outdoors with much more GPU bound workloads, it can drop from 16.5% down from a native display to 18 to 20%, meaning that it renders much higher than an expected 1600 by 900 resolution all of the time. And at worst, the Xbox One is rendering 20% less pixels, give or take, than the PS4, and at best, it is identical. Now, in practice, this is not that easy to spot other than high contrast daytimes and across textures at points. It does not greatly distract from the game's impressive look and may actually be something Microsoft are integrating into the API itself to balance expected GPU load, which AMD cards have the ability to monitor and react to in real time. In fact, so do Nvidia cards when one jumps on me. Now, aside from being a good thing to use resource much better for these scenarios, it is far from new, but a welcome progression with both engines and APIs alike, and the low range and fixed nature of the counts points even more towards this possibly being more than just a snowdrop process. And to be clear, from all tests, the PS4 never drops lower than its native 1080 display. So with that said, we are looking at the same visual quality across these platforms. Well, at first glance and a quick look, the answer would be yes. And then even further, the same answer is also given. This means that all texture work, geometry and post effects are all equally realised on both machines, including lighting, which can still error at times on all versions, with X1 being as prone as PS4. LOD levels of objects and shadow maps can be short at times and near identical on both machines, which you can see in the video tests. Occasionally the resolution maps can look ever so slightly lower on Xbox One, but with this an in-depth look it is still almost impossible to see any difference 99.9% of the time. With the game's most likely voxel-based volumetric lighting irradiance probes for direct and indirect global illumination, see my Quantum preview video for more information on how this works, gives the game its varied, stunning and realistic views across both indoor and outdoor sections, complete with dynamic weather that affects snowdrifts, flakes and scenery. As you can see in both versions, it delivers a sumptuous presentation, with only mip-map streaming and some LOD shadow popping at times really separating them. Again, aside some of the volumetric pop in and out that I mentioned earlier, which can affect all versions separately. Within these like-for-like tests, aside the aforementioned dynamic weather and lighting, you're looking at the same game across both platforms. Aside these streaming changes that can affect both machines and PC alike, the same delivery of visuals, dynamic time of day, weather, AI, destruction and shader work gives us a near identical presentation that only really shows difference in this detailed side-by-side comparison. The sheer dynamic nature of the world, procedural destruction, is one of the game's and engine's strongest features, and is as equally impressive and enjoyable on either machine. which leaves performance as the real differentiator between the release here and, like the beta, the PS4 commands a tangible lead. If not a perfectly locked 30 FPS across all tested sections, it is extremely close, and it does this while keeping the screen fully locked on the vertical axis with the X1 running an adaptive VSync that allows the screen to tear occasionally. Now, far from common scenario it presents itself when alpha effects like fire fill the screen, or volumetric like, or the 1080 cinematics, which points all the issues easily at the GPU, which is not a huge surprise. In conjunction, it can drop a frame also in these sections, and even if far removed from being a real issue to hinder enjoyment or control, these drops can be noticed as you play and leaves the X1 slightly behind the PS4s if you have the choice of the two versions. You can see the all-important detailed metrics on screen from the real-time counter and frame time graph, along with overall analysed metrics, giving you a complete breakdown of how each machine performs, which are also compared in the PC video. Now, I haven't covered the Dark Zone section here, so what you're seeing the metrics on screen are the single player metrics, or at least the online portion single player metrics. The whole game is constantly connected online. You have no other choice but to play it when the servers are up, and in fact they've been down for maintenance twice. I've been booted out of the game, as I'm sure many of you guys already have. But in terms of the game itself, the performance in the single player is pretty much locked on the PS4, as you can see, and near as damn it close on the Xbox One. There is no real concern in the performance on both machines. Loading times in the game are very good, even on stock drives, but if you bump in an SSHD on the PS4 or Xbox One using the external caddy and a USB 3 port, then you can gain a few more seconds, but most of the time you're affected by the online connection to the servers any more than you are from loading. Once the game is in and up and running, as long as you don't die, you tend to go seamlessly in and out of the sections. The only real loading you get is when you move between Manhattan and Brooklyn. Outside of that, everything pretty much seamlessly pops in with a fade to black in and out of cutscenes. There's no real issues for loading. Like I say, when you die, it's a few seconds to load back into the game. The loading is very good. Even online play is not behind a menu. Just run through a gate or hole into the Dark Zone and you are into an open playground of theft, rummaging and death. In fact, I'm impressed with the engine overall. It's incredibly well multi-threaded, with loading, streaming and saving not causing any issues at all with the engine. And again, when you're streaming this many assets in such a wide and open world like this and at this quality, it must be stressed. They are doing an incredibly good job here. And aside the mentioned visual changes, the only real divide is the small performance one, splitting the two versions, leaving the PS4 as my recommended version of the two, but the Xbox One version is only picked up with this detailed look, and even then, this is the version I have played and completed the single player on, so it proves how enjoyable and impressive it still is. Only if you have the choice does it become a close runner-up. Please check out the PC versions on how they compare to the consoles, and also what the Snowdrop engine is delivering here and how damn good the game can look in my other videos. But for now, this video comes to a close, and the time with the Division on both console versions has now been fully analysed. If you have any more questions, please drop them below along with your thoughts. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs. If you didn't, give it a down and tell me what you didn't like. If you did enjoy this or any of my other content, then please feel free to subscribe and also comment about it and link it in forums, so long as you're talking about work that I've covered. You guys and girls take care, and I'll see you very soon on the next one.
Over there. There's a bar behind that building. Best whiskey sours in Manhattan. If we take this city back, I'll buy you a drink. Sorry. I mean, when we take it back. Here it comes. The rest of us should be in this chopper. Can't believe it's finally happening.